How is everybody?
We're good. We're all still here, as you can see.
Yeah, well, Britain's a bit hippie, but there you go.
Various states of disrepair, but never mind.
You seem to get younger and younger every time we talk about when we met you. How old were you when we met you?
I first met you guys, the Goodwill to All, I think, in Harrow.
Yeah.
And
Were
that
you
would
16 then?
I hope he was, or I wouldn't have let him in.
I think I was certainly 16. It might have even. I'm trying to think how I used to get to.
You drove a Ford Escort.
Yeah, well, I would if I had my mum's Ford Escort, I must have been 17. So.
Even from an early age, Chris, you had a really irritating knack of being able to play anything perfectly, any style, almost immediately. I mean, can I personally say, although I did this at the time, it used to drive me mad. I suppose if I say to you, how the hell did you do it without, YouTube and what have you to help you, you would say, I don't know. I'm going to ask you anyway, how did you do it? And I mean, we're talking Don Watson, Rags, Gypsy Jazz, you name it, you could play it.
Well, I was always... I got my first Chet Atkins record for my 10th birthday from my sister. A record called Down Home. That was Chet Atkins playing a load of stuff in the way that Chet Atkins, the same way that Chet Atkins was lovely. He played one thing all the time. I mean, he was a one-style player, but so was Diz Disley. I mean, he just played one thing. He did it very, very well. And I remember at the age of 10, getting this record and being captivated by it. It had some wonderful tunes on it. And I remember just sitting there for the next several months to the detriment of all my schoolwork, hence the 4 O levels. But I mean, just working away and working out all these things. Then when I heard Doc Watson when I was about 16, and that was the first flat picking record I ever heard. And all of a sudden, until that time, I played everything thumb and 3 fingers. It was only when I was about 15 or 16 years old I actually picked up a pick, and I've never really put it down since. I don't play fingerstyle very seldom now. And then, of course, I started playing with Disley. And of course, doing his regular folk club act, and then as a result of that, doing the stuff with Grappelli, and of course that was, that's a complete immersion into the whole swing jazz thing. And of course, the other guitar player was Denny Wright, who was a fantastic guitar player. I mean, Disley was a fabulous guitar player. Denny Wright was an absolutely stupendous guitar player. He was a lot older, but he'd been a session player with the BBC since like the late 1930s. I mean, this guy. He'd been in the business for a long, long time. And he taught me, he never taught me anything he never actually sat down and said to me, okay, try doing this. But, I just learned an awful lot from him, just from being around him and just watching him. Because I don't read music at all. I've always done everything by ear. So I've always been pretty good at, watching somebody play something and then looking at the position of their hands and then remembering what it sounded like. And so when I get home, hurry home from the folk club, get my guitar out. I think hang on, it was like that and it sounded like this. And so, it's just been, it's just they say of good snooker players, it's a sign of a misspent youth. I think it's exactly the same. It's exactly what it is, Just after I left school, I was playing at the Keele Folk Festival in Staffordshire with Diz Disley, and we'd done the regular gig and everything, and it all gone very well. And as soon as we came off the stage, there was a guy there whose name was Dave Creech, who's from Bristol. And he introduced himself and he said, really enjoyed that, etc. He said, would you like to join a band? And I said, what's the band? And he said, it's called Pigsty Hill Light Orchestra. And I thought it was a strange name, but I said, okay. I said, what sort of band is it? And he said, well, if you come next door into the other room, you can see for yourself in 10 minutes' time because we're on. And it was actually the last gig that Andy Leggett, the then guitar player, was doing because he'd announced he wanted to leave. He wanted to go and do other stuff. And so they were kind of desperate to find a guitar player, and they just happened to see me there with Disley. So to cut a long story short, about a week later, I drove down to Bristol and went into sort of various rehearsals for a few days. And then a few days after that, we did a couple of gigs in the Midlands in little folk clubs. And then a week after that, we went to Belgium and Germany for about 6 weeks. I'd only been out of school maybe 2 months, and I found myself in the back of the Ford Transit bouncing around Germany. It was hugely exciting.
What a way to live!
Well, I mean, it was just enormously exciting for a kid.
Yeah,
to do,
of course.
Just brilliant. Chipping in on people's floors and sofas, and you sometimes in the back of the van and all. But I mean, when you're 19, you don't care. It's great. And so that was. I did that for about how long was it? A couple of years, I guess, and then I joined a band called White on Black, also in Bristol, and then Fred Wedlock and Brenda Wooten and all that. So I think it's probably only been about 7 bands or 7 acts I've played with.
Chris, I've been telling them about the story about White on Black and your recording of All I Want to Do.
Oh, Jesus.
That sounds like it's got to be a good story.
White on Black had an extremely ambitious manager who everybody was based in Bristol, and she was very ambitious. She was a nice woman. She was very good. She was a real hustler, which is what you've got to be, I guess, if you're doing it. And she decided that White on Black were going to be the next. Oh God, who were the bands at the time? This is like you're talking about early 1970s. 2 boys, 2 girls in the band, all very sort of, you run on stage and all this kind of. I used to refuse to run on stage. I used to say I wouldn't mind walking briskly, but I wouldn't run. I flat refused, But anyway, they had this idea they're going to do a single. We turned up at this studio. It was Psalm Studios, Psalm East in London. Big, very, very, very seriously flash studio. And we got there, and of course, and we all sort of turned up with all our instruments and everything. And of course, we weren't going to play a note because it had all been done by session players. And there was a complete. I mean, we walked in there, and the guy said, the producer, I remember the guy. I won't mention his name, but I remember the guy quite well. And he said, here's the track. He said, hey, what do you think of this? And he pressed the button. The engineer pressed the button, and this enormous sound came out of this thing. This whole. Completely crazy. And I was saying there with the guitar saying, well, what do I do? And they said, well, nothing. 3 other people in the band sang on it. I didn't. They got a session singer in to take my part. Because I don't sing.
That's not very nice.
but no, it was interesting. I mean, I think it got to about number 198 in the top 200. I mean, the flip side actually was a better song. It was written by Dave Paskett. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I do. I was going to ask you about him, actually. Go on, tell the story first.
But it was a song he wrote called Luxury, which was actually a really nice, sort of wistful little song, bouncy little song. And that was the B-side, which I actually thought was a better song.
I remember you doing a recording with Dave Paskett, which was really kind of, for me, revolutionary, where the beginning of the song was done through a telephone.
That's right.
You were standing in the road opposite in a telephone booth.
No, he was... I used to live in Royal York Crescent on the first floor. We had a balcony on Royal York Crescent, and directly over the road was a telephone box, right? And Dave Paskett had written this song called The Telephone Song, and the first line was 9 turns of the fingertip keep us in line. My kiosk is lifting for cloud number 9, or so. I can't remember the word, but anyway. And I said it'd be great if you could actually sing that down a phone. It's all how. I mean, these days, of course, with computers, you could just press a button and you can create it. But in those days, so what we did, we got Dave Paskett to go over the road because I had my mighty 4-track TIAC and my Revox A77 in the room. And so what Dave did, he went across the road into the phone box and sort of put 4 pennies in or whatever it was. And I got the microphone and stuck it up against the thing and sort of waved it and said, "Yeah, go now." So he picked up because he didn't have a note. Because he didn't know what key was supposed to be in. So I'm there. So I go out on the balcony because the phone box was just down. It wasn't very far away. And it was in G or whatever key it was in. So I went on the balcony with a guitar. I went bang, bang, bang. And he went, no, okay. So he goes running in again. By which time he starts singing and it goes beep, 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 beep.
You couldn't make this stuff up, could you?
It's incredible, but actual fact, it worked. So he actually sings. He's singing down, and I'm standing there holding the old phone in one hand and the microphone up against the thing in the other, and then I'm sort of pressing the record button on the TIAC, and then we just sort of spiced it in. But it actually worked. I mean, it was extraordinary.
Chris, you did achieve chart success with Fred Wedlock, didn't you? That was you, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. 1981, March 81, the oldest swinger in town. We recorded that in August 1979, and it was an album. He and I made a joint album because what happened was I hadn't made any records of my own yet in 1979, and I didn't have enough stuff to do a whole album. I mean, nowhere near enough stuff, what I consider. And Fred wanted to do a new recording, and he was about half a dozen items short. So we decided, as we were working as a duo by that time, we'd do an album, and it would be mostly his songs, but also a few of my tunes. And so that's how we did. And we recorded the whole thing in 1 week flat, 5 days actually, at Crescent Studio in Bath, engineered by a guy called David Lord, who went on to do wonderful things. He became Peter Gabriel's producer. I mean, David Law was a very talented, very, very talented man. But anyway, we did. It was rather like actually the White on Black experience for me, because on the Monday morning, Fred came into the studio in Bath, clutching his guitar case. You see, and he said, "Oh, morning, everybody." And I said, "What are you doing with what's that?" He said, "It's my guitar." I said, "Well, you put that back in the car. You won't need that." Which is a bit bruised. But I was producing this album. Anyway, I did all the. He came in on the Monday morning and he did guide vocals of all the songs, just literally just one guitar, and Fred just did a guide vocal. There were no click tracks, nothing like that. And then I said, "Okay, off you go, come back in a few days' time." And he came back on the Thursday, and the first thing I said to him was, "Okay, this is your first hit single."
When you score with a chick in a disco bar, take her home in your hairy little car, then you find you went to school with her mom. Pa, you're the oldest swinger in town. When you won't look in a mirror in the light of day, swear you dyed it when your hair turns grey. When you zip up your Wranglers and your belly's in the way, you're the oldest swinger in town.
And then Noel Edmonds' program on Radio 1 back in those days was the program that everybody listened to it. Yeah, it was an excellent program. I mean, it was lovely. And I suddenly got this phone call one Sunday morning, and it was an extremely excited Fred Wedlock who'd been sitting at home just with the radio on and heard himself on Noel Edmonds' program. He had no idea, of course, and he was just completely sort of like gobsmacked. He was like, "Holy cow!" And so he rang me up, and as he rang me up, you could hear Noel Edmonds back announcing the record. He says, Noel Edmonds said, "Do you know?" He said, "I like that record so much, I'm going to play it again." And just played it again immediately. And then I think he played it once more before the end of the program. And that from that point on, it just went bang, for newspapers, Sun newspaper and Daily Mirror, they were doing oldest figure in town competitions. Come on, girls, nominate your husband, boyfriend, father, whatever. And your star prize is a night out at the Talk of the Town with the oldest figure in town, Fred Wedlock. And it was all this kind of stuff. I mean, it was really bizarre. The second prize is 3 nights out with...
Now, Chris, I have to thank you and Fred Wedlock, because after that experience on Radio 1, Fred was hired by Noel to sing a topical song every week.
26 weeks.
And he called me and said, "Listen, could you be on the roster? So if we're really hard up, we'll call you. And I got a number of calls from him saying, you know, it's a song about a bread strike. It's a song about this. It's a song about that. And usually it was what? In the key of G, and it had to be 90 seconds long and it had to be funny.
Well, I mean, with that program, that was the nearest thing to a steady job I've ever had. It was 26 weeks we did that. And basically it was we did 2 songs a week on the Noel Edmonds show. There were 3 writers. There was Miles Wootton from Brighton. There was Andy Leggett, who was the guy I replaced in Pigsty Hill Orchestra, and obviously yourself. And so what would happen is, this is long before computers or fax machines, but I would usually about the Thursday I would get somebody would ring me up with the lyrics of the song. Like, for example, Andy Leggett would ring up or something, and I'd just be copying them out over the, writing the lyrics down, and then just come up with the tune. Then Fred and I would go up to London on Sunday morning and do them. And we did that for 6 months, and it was huge. It was huge fun, actually. It was an interesting thing being sort of part of the Radio 1 team for a very short time, but it was an interesting experience. The funniest thing about that thing, there was one song, I'm not sure who the lyricist was, but it was a song about Freddie Laker's Sky Train. I don't know if it was you, Lou. I can't remember. But anyway, it was a very slow song. And it was the Sky Train, the original Freddie Laker cheap flight to America, had just been pulled. It had just been terminated. So it was a very slow song. It was a bit of a sort of a sad ballad about the demise of the Sky Train. And so we were sitting in the studio in London, in Broadcasting House. And of course, every studio in the BBC's got a piano in it. So I'm just sitting at this thing, and I'd worked out the tune on the accompaniment on the guitar. So I was just sitting there just playing, and it was in C, which is fine. It's the only key I can play anything in on the piano. So I'm just playing this tune, Fred's singing it, and I'm playing it on the piano. And Trevor Dan walks in and says, "Oh," he said, "I didn't know you could play the piano." I said, "I can't." He said, "Yes, you can." He said, "You are." I said, "No." He said, "Right." He said, He said, "Engineers, mic up the piano." And I did my piano debut on the
Laker's Sky Train.
Brilliant.
It's the only time I've ever played piano on the radio, and my heart was doing this. I mean, it was only like 4 or 5 chords and stuff, but I'm not a piano player. Jeez, I was such a chance on my heart. And all of a sudden, the red light goes on. You realise there's like 12 million people listening to this bloody. That was one of the scariest things I've ever done.
But I was talking to you about a friend of mine who's actually a keyboard player, who's Irish, and we went into YouTube. And we were playing your Morris stuff as well as the guitar. Well, to be honest with you, he wasn't into the guitar, but he absolutely loved the Celtic harp. And he was trying to explain to me how the thing worked with those kind of levers. Can you explain a bit about how it works? It's a shame Maura isn't there, but can you explain a bit how it works?
Yeah, sure. Certainly. The Irish harp has the one that Maura plays has 36 strings, so yeah. It's A to A, and the thing about the Irish harp is it's not tuned chromatically; it's tuned diatonically. So her harp's tuned in the key of F. So basically, if all the levers on the top of the harp are down, you just have a scale of F, just a scale of F major.
Oh, so not the best for you, but there you go.
But what happens is, if you, for example, if you take one of the G note, if you take one of the C notes, which are on the Irish harp, the C notes are red and the F's are blue, and all the other strings are sort of neutral coloured. But it's the fact that you have red and blue. That's how the harp players find their way. It's a bit like having a position dot on a guitar. Without that, you'd have no reference. It'd be very difficult. So what you do is if you play one of the red strings with the lever in this position, you get a C natural. And if you flip the lever up to this position, the back of the lever pushes the string against a little post, and it raises the pitch of the string by a semitone. So the C natural becomes a C sharp. So the D natural becomes a D sharp, E natural, E sharp, etc., etc., etc. E sharp, of course, is the same as F. So you could have 2 strings with this next to each other with the same pitch, because you'd have like an E. You have an E natural becomes an E sharp, and that's next to an F natural because they'd sound the same. That's basically what it means. But what this means is that this allows the harps to play in. But this is why we never play anything in flat keys. We always play everything in sharp keys, because you start in F and then work backwards. So you go C, G, A, E, very occasionally be. We never don't think we ever played anything in F sharp. I don't think we ever played anything in B actually, but maybe actually we have. But the vast majority of the stuff we do is in G, D, A, and E, which is the standard keys. And having the harp tuned in F enables you to easily flick a few. I mean, not easily. It's easy if you know how to do it. I couldn't do it, but before we start a number, Maura will sort of go, what keys it? Oh, it's in A. So you go click, 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 click. So you do, they're the ones you do. But what it means, of course, she's developed this kind of idea of playing solos by actually moving the levers in the while she's playing. So she's playing with the right hand.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I was watching, and I mean, it was throwing me completely. I thought she was tuning up for a moment, like exactly. The guitar. And I thought,
we do lots of sort of swing jazz stuff, which is my old hangover from the Disney days and everything. And so she comes up with solos and stuff, which uses all this stuff, and audiences love it, of course, because she's sitting there. And I'm just sort of going chunk, 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 and she's playing this thing with the right hand, and with the left hand, she's just going up and down like a yo-yo on this thing.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive. But for the last 3 months, I've been learning and recording lots and lots of solo partitas for flute, cello, and violin from J.S. Bach, which is something I've never done before. And some of those are just fantastic to play. I mean, they're just wonderful, wonderful pieces. They're very difficult. I'm actually going to do an album, the working title of which is flat picking the classics. I think that. And they're just enormously good fun to play. I mean, they're extremely difficult, but it's good. But that's the thing I like playing. If I'm just picking the guitar up and I just want to play something just for fun, that's what I play, for sure. When I'm playing with Maura, we do lots of stuff. I mean, most of what we play is Irish music, of course, because of her background. And there are some just from some fantastic sets of tunes that we have in the we've had over the years in different repertoires. So really, when we're playing together, either one of the sort of sets of traditional jigs from the early 19th century or something from County Cork or County Kerry, something like that, or by complete reversal, some sort of swing jazz things, which are tunes which I make up, which are the very chordy, chromatic things, which of course involves doing all the clever stuff with the levers, and that's really good fun to do as well. So it's a mixture really of traditional Irish, sort of very, very old music from JSB, and very, very modern music from the 21st century. So it's a very eclectic mix, but that's always been my problem actually, is that I've always been I've always enjoyed just doing lots and lots and lots of different things. I've always hated just being stuck in a rut. which is the thing I've always enjoyed. Is I've always think it's a good thing, and people have often pointed out it's not a particularly good thing because it's very hard for you to be categorised, from a commercial point of view. But at this stage, I could give a monkeys about that. I mean, I just do. All I do now, I just play stuff I enjoy playing because I enjoy playing. I only play music I enjoy playing. I only play with people I enjoy playing with, because I think at this stage, life's far too short to play with play music you don't like, or B, play with people you can't stand. That's just the point.